Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our complimentary webinar this afternoon. We do have a special guest from AOAC who we're very interested to work with and hear about their new PT programs for cannabis and hemp. As most of you may be aware, there has been PT programs that have been available, and AOAC, through other providers, AOAC has been involved heavily with other areas, food and agriculture, and now they're really focusing in on this area based on request. They have been working heavily on other criteria documents to address the cannabis and hemp industry. So we're really happy to have Shane Flynn, the Director of Proficiency Testing from AOAC, to join us today to give us an overview on their program. Also, through this webinar today, we're going to talk about a little bit over the overview of proficiency testing, the requirements, what goes into it, considerations that laboratories should have when selecting an appropriate PT. And then again, we're going to go through updates to what AOAC is offering, some supporting committees that they also have related to this industry, and some new documents that are available. Okay, so with that, if just a little bit of webinar housekeeping before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, so if you can't hang for the whole webinar, it will be available for you to download later and listen to the recording, or you can pass the message along to a colleague if they were interested and couldn't make it today. This will again be available on our YouTube channel and on our website. And as you notice, everyone is muted for the entire session. We do encourage you, as things come up through the presentation today, to use your questions toolbar to go ahead and type in questions so that at the end we'll have some time to address those. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome Shane Flynn as the Senior Director of the AOAC Laboratory Proficiency Testing Program. And Shane Shane helped start the first accredited proficiency testing program for food labs in the US and has been developing new programs to address the needs of the analytical community ever since. So he's been with AOAC for a very long time, for over 26 years. And like I had mentioned earlier, his involvement was with other areas in food chemistry, pesticides, infant formula, for example, and now working with the chemical and hemp matrices. He also has played different roles with different criteria documents that AOAC is working on, as well as their CAS committee. AOAC, if you're familiar, is a group through AOAC. Right, previously, their document was just really written for food and pharmaceutical laboratories who wanted to have to implement additional requirements above 17025. Now it also includes an annex for cannabis. So that document is now available. Shane will talk about that. But it's really good for cannabis labs that may not have a real good direction on how to implement things from a regulatory perspective, and also from 17025 perspective. So with that, Shane, thank you for joining us, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Tracy. We really appreciate Perry Johnson allowing us to give this webinar and partnering with you guys to provide more information on cannabis and hemp proficiency testing. We think this is going to add a lot of value to the information provided to the accredited labs you all have. So thank you. As Tracy mentioned, we do want to cover a couple of different areas. We realize that people may be in a different part of achieving accreditation. They might be in the process of getting accreditation. They might already be accredited or just looking into becoming accredited. So I do want to cover a little bit of the general sense of what is proficiency testing, what is its purpose, etc. Then I'd also like to talk about the different types of proficiency testing that's available for cannabis and hemp laboratories. Then move into a little bit about specifically what sets the AOAC program apart, because we really have made leaps and bounds above some of the other programs, and we just want to point some of these things out. And then talk a little bit about the 17025, the AOAC guide that interprets 17025 for the cannabis laboratories. I think that's a great tool for any laboratory, whether you're new to testing cannabis and hemp, or if you've been around for a while. It provides that extra guidance that you could really use. So let's just start with the overall general thought of what is proficiency testing and what is the objective of proficiency testing. And really overall, it's to improve the analytical performance by providing an independent measure of the quality of data. And I think this is a good opening, strong statement, because many laboratories, they forget about improve. A lot of laboratories just want to meet the requirements. They're saying, hey, we're meeting requirements, we're good enough. Well, yes, okay, but you should constantly want to improve your laboratory, and that's where proficiency testing can help. Look at your data, look at the scores. Is your Z-score above, below, and see what you can do with your procedures and processes to kind of bring that down to a Z-score that's closer to 0. Now, when you're dealing with the role of proficiency, sorry, not sure what happened there. Role of proficiency testing and quality assurance. This is the self-improvement of the laboratory. This is to help, estimates the relative accuracy and precision of results compared to other laboratories that are also comparing the same sample. It's to help identify weak methodology. It can help detect training needs and to upgrade the overall quality of laboratory performance across the board. Now let's look at not sure where we're getting feedback. I apologize. Proof of competence. You can prove technical competence to customers through proficiency testing. You can establish your international credibility for exported goods. You can also help meet accreditation requirements for 17025. And something also that's come up in the past couple of years is it also helps any laboratories that might be dealing with SQF or GFSI certifications that might not apply right now to the cannabis and hemp industry, but as we move more into gummies and oils and things that might be CBD related and produced and offered in grocery stores, that these are things that we also want to consider. And it also helps to validate vendors. So accreditation for laboratories involves 17025, general requirements for the competence of testing and calibration laboratories. This is a broad spectrum. Everybody needs to realize that it's for food, environmental, cannabis, hemp, and also the calibration side. So the 17025 guide is meant to be all-encompassing, which is great. It also specifies the general requirements for the competence, impartiality, and consistency in the operations of laboratories. It's also applicable to all organizations performing laboratory activities, regardless of the number of personnel. It's used by regulatory authorities, organizations, to make sure that competency through proficiency testing is achieved. I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties. So accreditation for proficiency testing providers. We are 17043 accredited, and that is for the general requirements of proficiency testing. It specifies the general requirements for the competence of providers of proficiency testing schemes. It gives us the layout. What do you need to do to be an accredited proficiency testing provider? And with that comes an awful lot of responsibility. It comes with an awful lot of the use of other ISO standards. One of those is that, yes, we're running the program according to accreditation, samples are prepared that way, but how are you providing evaluations? And that's where 13528 comes in. That's the statistical methods for use in proficiency testing. This document provides detailed descriptions of statistical methods for proficiency testing providers to use to design PT schemes and to analyze the data obtained from those schemes. The document also provides recommendations on the interpretation, and that's huge because there's different ways to interpret data. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in specifics when it comes down to hemp and cannabis, but that's an important trait to remember. The procedures in the document can also be applied to demonstrate that measurement results obtained by laboratories, inspection bodies, regulatory agencies, individuals meet the specific criteria for acceptable performance. This document is applicable to PT where results are reported, either quantitative measurements or qualitative measurements. And I'm going to go again into the specifics in a little bit. Accreditation requirements. This is just a quick throw up here. So yes, you're an accredited laboratory, you have a quality system, you have to have your documentation. Obviously, you know, you have to have tons of internal audits, you have your quality control, and also they are going to require proficiency testing. This is not only a requirement of just making sure you meet the accreditation requirements, but most of the state regulators are, if not all, are requiring cannabis and hemp laboratories to be accredited. So you want to make sure that you're meeting all of those requirements. So let's take a look at the proficiency testing and the procedure. I am not sure. I apologize for the technical difficulties, guys. I'm not sure what's going on with the sound. So proficiency testing. Let's look at the procedure. Randomly selected subsamples of test materials are distributed to participating laboratories for concurrent testing. The test materials must be homogeneous and stable for the time period and storage conditions during shipment and analysis. And this is key too, because you want to make sure that your samples are homogeneous when they arrive ready to analyze. Participating laboratories analyze the test materials, and then they submit results to the Proficiency Testing Program provider by the deadline. Statistical software then analyzes and calculates results, and laboratories are assessed on the difference between their results and the assigned value. So this is where it comes into the z-score, the z-prime, etc. That's going to look at the assigned value, and that depends on how it's determined. Is that determined by consensus, reference lab values? Is that a spike value? That's going to depend on the proficiency testing program. But you want to make sure that you're in a program that is appropriate for what you're looking to be scored on. So a performance score based on a z-score is calculated for each laboratory for each test, and reports are distributed to participating laboratories. The test materials are distributed on a regular basis to provide an opportunity to measure performance and identify and correct problems. So note that when you participate in a proficiency testing program, often laboratories might have a non-conformance. You want to make sure that that PT program has the ability to provide you with extra samples from that round or a quality assurance and educational sample that you can then go and do corrective actions with. That's going to be a huge part of PT. When it comes to proficiency testing, you're scored on a couple of different ways. There can be ranges, there can be z-scores, there can be z-prime scores. But the main one here is the z-score. This is how it's calculated. It's usually the reported value of the analyte that you report, that a laboratory reports, minus the assigned value, and then that's divided by the standard deviation. That's going to give you your z-score. That's going to tell you how far above or how far below you are in comparison to that assigned value. And that's where the laboratory needs to take a look at their processes and say, hey, why do we have a z-score that's 2? We just made it. We're just under that unsatisfactory range. What do we need to do to make improvements here? Why develop a program? So I want to move into something different. You know, we've covered the aspects of what is proficiency testing, what is it used for, but there was already many PTs for cannabis and hemp out there. So people say, well, you know, why did AOAC develop a program? And, you know, one of the reasons is that, you know, we have a long history. We started in 1884. So long history of providing scientific guidance, standards and methods for food and agriculture. That is our mission. In food and agriculture, we set the standard. So labs came to us and said, hey, there's a lot of PT programs out there, but there's some things that we think can be improved upon. What can you guys do? And one of the things that AOAC has always prided itself on is through the years, we have developed PT programs that use actual matrices, not surrogates. So for instance, when you're talking about cannabis and hemp, if you're a cannabis lab, is a tea leaf that you have to spike really the optimal matrix, or would you like to receive an actual cannabis sample? And if you can't receive an actual cannabis sample, how about an actual hemp sample that has those components? So these are things that we need to look at, and we did when considering developing a program. And this is also where CASP, which is the Cannabis Analytical Science Program, comes into account, because we don't just get a small body of people put together as a task force with 10 to 12 people saying, hey, you guys come up with what this program needs to look like. Okay, since we're a standards organization and we have the CASP program, we have solicited the feedback of over 500 people representing over 250 laboratories that have provided us with feedback on what needs to be done. What are they looking for in a PT program? So I think that's one of the things that first sets us apart, is being able to reach out to our members, to our stakeholders, and say, what do you need? Which is a little bit different than how our competitors are. So why develop a PT program for cannabis and hemp? Well, currently, a lot of the programs participating labs have to spike their own samples. Well, this creates additional opportunity for errors, absolutely. So you need to start with a good homogeneous sample, which is what AOAC does. AOAC provides a ready to analyze sample in an actual matrix. This helps reduce the opportunity for error. Another thing that came to us is cannabis labs have to analyze hemp. There's no programs that have actual cannabis. Well, we now have that, and that eliminates that. So AOAC now can provide, the greater than 3% low, medium, high percent THC cannabis for those laboratories that possess a DEA license and can receive the cannabis samples. And for those that can't, we do also have the hemp samples, which are also a great alternative. Some of the other issues people are running into is, pesticide analysis is much different for cannabis versus hemp. So yes, we do have a pesticide program in cannabis, actual cannabis flower. One other thing that's brought, cannabinoids are lower in hemp, so the same dilution scheme may not be appropriate for labs doing only high THC material. And again, this comes down to our micro programs. Perhaps you need a cannabis matrix that address these issues, such as the cannabinoids, and how that may or may not have matrix interference with the analysis you're trying to complete. So there's many programs out there. Let's talk a little bit about what may set our program apart. In addition to the hemp, AOAC, like I said, can send the Delta 9 THC, low, medium, and high cannabis, not only flower, but we do have oil and now edibles. And we can do that by partnering with Signature Science. Signature Science is a great network of laboratories. Not only do they focus on narcotics and cannabis and also threat agents, but they have a full array of special proficiency testing programs. So we thought they were the right network of laboratories to partner with. So they are able to provide, produce, package, and ship greater than 3% THC cannabis. So that is one of the things that sets us apart, is having that capability by partnering with Signature Science. The AOAC samples arrive homogeneous and ready to analyze. There's no spiking required. A lot of the PT programs out there right now do have, you receive the sample, you have the matrix, and then you have a spike. And you have to spike that matrix and then make sure it's homogeneous before you even analyze. You also have to wonder how many labs are actually spiking it and not just analyzing the spike. So this removes some of that stuff. This is an actual sample that arrives ready to analyze. And it's homogeneous. You don't have to do anything. We also took the approach of using reference laboratories for statistics. Most of our competitors use consensus. It's the thought of the industry, at least the experts that we talk to, is that industry is new, methods are new, labs are new, personnel is new. Perhaps overall consensus is not the way to go. So some of our programs use a reference lab that's traceable back to validated methods for assigned values. And I think that's another thing that sets us apart from other programs. We're a scientific association. We have many subject matter experts. If you have a question, contact us. We can put you in touch with the right person. If they're experts on cannabinoids, terpenes, pesticides, mycotoxins, etc., we can help you make that connection. And again, our program was developed through the Cannabis Analytical Science Program, which I encourage all of you guys to take a look at and join if you're not already members. And although we're producing top quality samples, we're a nonprofit association. We're usually less expensive or comparable to all of our competitors, and we're providing a much premier proficiency testing sample. So let's look at, in selecting a proficiency testing program, we can look at the differences in PT programs, some of which I've already mentioned. Let's look at the fit for purpose, the risk, and the overall impact of your quality system when choosing a proficiency testing program. So some of the differences in proficiency testing programs you'll notice is matrices. Is your proficiency testing matrix like a routine sample? 17025 says it should be. So this is one of the things that laboratories need to take into account, especially with new programs like this that are actually offering samples that are more relevant to what you're testing. Is your PT matrix like a routine sample? Does the lab have to spike the samples themselves? And what type of error are we opening ourselves up to if this is the case that the lab has to prepare their own sample before the regular analysis even begins? Does the lab have to purchase the calibration standard from a PT provider? I've been in countless meetings so far where it's been brought to our attention that there's other programs out there where they say, hey, basically in order to pass our test, you have to buy our calibration standard. That's not like a routine sample. So we need to look at these things as you choose programs. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, assigned values and target values. How are they being produced? Is it consensus? Is it reference labs? Is it spiked values? All of these things make a difference when interpreting evaluations of a laboratory. So I encourage laboratories to look at how are your results being processed? How are your results being relayed to you? And what are the significance of those results? And that's where evaluations come in. There's many different ways under ISO 13528 to do evaluations. There's Z-scores, there's Z-prime scores, there's ranges. There's a lot of other things that need to be attributed to the type of matrix, the type of analyses that are going on. All of these things, again, need to be taken into consideration when considering a proficiency testing program. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, this PT has the analytes I need, boom, I'm good to go. There's much other things to be considered. And that brings us to fit for purpose. Is the PT program I'm looking at or participating in fit for purpose? Does it suit my needs? And again, it goes back to, is that PT matrix like a routine sample? Or is it not? And what can we do to get a more routine sample? The other thing you need to consider is, when looking at these samples, yes, AOAC has cannabis and we do have hemp, but does your lab have the license to receive that? Does your lab have the DEA license to receive those samples? If not, then you can go with the hemp or something else. But these are all things that a lab needs to sit down and consider. Yes, I can do cannabis. No, I can't. Okay, what's the next best? What is the next best thing? Excuse me. So these are all things you want to consider while choosing a proficiency testing program. And as I mentioned in the slide before, are the evaluations appropriate? You want to choose a program where the grading is appropriate and fit for your purpose. I've seen proficiency testing programs where, yes, they're accredited, yes, they meet certain needs, but it could be they've had 3 participating laboratories and they're basing their results off a consensus. So what I say about that is, okay, so yes, it's meeting a need, but what information does that actually offer up if there's only 3 laboratories and you're basing a target value off of a mean of those 3 laboratories or even a median of those 3 laboratories? What if 1 or 2 are outliers or blunders? Is that information significant? I'm not sure. Yes, you're meeting your accreditation requirements because you're participating in a program, but how valuable is that information? Again, these are things that we want laboratories to consider. Risk. Oh yes, big topic. Risk management, risk assessment. Risk management, accuracy and reliability results. Laboratories perform tests and experiments that impact critical decisions in various fields. Effective risk management helps maintain the accuracy and reliability results by minimizing errors and ensuring consistent quality. Risk assessment determines possible mishaps, their likelihood and consequences, and tolerance for such events. The results of this process may be expressed in a quantitative or qualitative fashion. Risk assessment is an inherent part of a broader risk management strategy to help reduce any potential risk-related consequences. Risk management is going to take into account risk assessment. So as a laboratory, make sure you do your due diligence, and we look at the risk assessment, report that to anybody so that risk management can be done as well. And this needs to be appropriated with all the PT programs that you're trying to select for the different analytes and the different matrices. So once you participate in a proficiency testing program, I want to change gears a little bit. You're offered up a report, and these can vary vastly between PT programs. And AOAC has set itself aside a little bit or apart, and these are one of the reasons why, and I want to go through these. All of our reports, we have a technical report, and then we also have the appendices, which offer up all the technical and result information. So our technical reports offer round information, such as sample preparation, the instructions for analysis. Then we also include the individual and also overall results, evaluation and the scoring. And then we provide also graphics such as z-score plots, distribution, and homogeneity and stability where appropriate. And I did want to just provide I just wanted to go through one of our reports before. If you guys are already participating in a proficiency testing program, please look at the differences in what we are providing versus what you're already getting. Again, we do have technical reports which offer the vast information over the overall program round. But in listening to participant feedback and also regulator feedback, they were looking for, hey, can your appendix be standalone, where it just lists the lab name, the analyst name, when the date of the test, and when it was closed, because accrediting bodies have different needs of information than the participating laboratory, which also has different needs than the regulator you're reporting to. So we wanted to take all of these and encompass this feedback into our reports and provide it standalone. So you get the technical report, and then boom, you can pull out Appendix A and give that to whoever you need that has the bulk of the information that you're looking for, which are results. Again, lab name, analyst name, test initiation date, close date, submission date, and when the report date was. Let's go to the meat and bones of it all. So here we have the cannabinoids. We currently offer 18 different cannabinoids. That's always growing. It's an organic program. So as labs have needs, as industry has needs, as regulatory has needs, we update our programs. But you can see that we list all the different cannabinoids. We list the reported results. And then we also list the acceptable range. And that range is based off of the assigned value and the target standard deviations. As you can see, this lab did exceptionally well. All of their Z-scores are below 2 here. We do offer the opportunity also to provide total CBD, total CBG, total THC. These were added later to the program based on customer feedback. And then we have our terpenes. Currently, I think we have 34 or 35 terpenes. But again, this is an organic program, so we're always evolving, adding new things that laboratories can participate and report for. And I think one of the things that sets us apart again is when you look at the evaluation field, we color-coded this, and we did this based on feedback from the regulators and also the industry laboratories, because they said, hey, it's great to look at numbers and say we're this, we're that, but it'd be so helpful to have something that just says, hey, are we good or are we not? So we incorporated the color coding system where a Z-score between 0 and 2 is acceptable, and obviously it's green. Between 2 and 3 gives a warning signal. That's yellow, it's still acceptable. And then if it's greater than 3, it's unacceptable, and it's red, that provides a flag so that the laboratory can take a look at those particular analytes and see where they can make improvement. This is, again, just the caption of our heavy metals. Arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury were part of this round. But again, this laboratory did very well. And just want to give you a sense of how the data and results are reported back. We have two sets of samples for our flower biomass program. One is the all-natural flower, which contains, which is for the analysis of cannabinoids, terpenes, moisture, water activity, and the naturally occurring heavy metals. And then we also have the pesticides and mycotoxins, which are spiked into the flower. We wanted more control over these particular analytes. And this is just to give you an idea of how these particular residues are reported. So this is a pesticide report indicating again that the laboratory is acceptable for all evaluations. And here is the mycotoxins, and this is just showing that yes, this laboratory was still acceptable, still had an acceptable Z-score for aflatoxin B1. It fell within the range, but it's within that warning. It's within that warning category, so we wanted to pay attention to that. Pursuant to ISO 13528, we always try to offer graphics when available. So this is just a chart of how all the laboratories that participated in the round did with the various cannabinoids. Again, if you're a laboratory, you always want to try to obtain to be towards that zero and not be that laboratory that's the outlier. Distribution, in addition to the Z-score plots, we also provide distribution just so laboratories can see, where the bins are, where are the most popular results falling for that particular analyte. So, a lot of you are already participating in other PT programs, and we want to get the word out about the new PT programs. So here are the PT programs that AOAC currently offers. Our hemp, our dried flower and biomass programs in both hemp and cannabis are available. That has cannabinoids, terpenes, water activity, moisture, heavy metals, pesticides, and mycotoxins that is already accredited. And we've also had pilot rounds of our oils and getting ready to have a pilot round of our gummies. So this is extremely important because once we get this data processed and out to the laboratories, we'll be able to submit this for accreditation. So we expect these programs to be accredited within the next few months. But again, our dried flower and biomass samples are accredited. All of these samples are available also as quality assurance and educational samples, which I'll get into in a little bit. But, it's great to have the chemical constituents and contaminants programs, but one of the focuses as of late has been on microbial contaminants. That's been a big point of controversy lately. We did just finish up our pilot round for this, which included Aspergillus, E. coli staic, Salmonella, and Staph aureus for our pilot round. In addition to, for qualitative, in addition to quantitative for APC and total aerobic count, coliforms, generic E. coli, bile tolerant, gram-negative, and Enterobacteriaceae, and yeast and mold. This was done in a dried flower biomass hemp. So we started our pilot with the hemp, and we might move that into an actual cannabis matrices, depending on the need from the laboratories, if they need to have that in a cannabis matrix, because again, we don't know the effect, what needs to be accounted for when you have that high THC content. So these are things that we're working with. But we did have a pilot for this program, and it will be available live starting, I believe it's Q4 here. So please contact us if you're interested in getting those samples. Again, those samples arrive as an actual hemp matrix ground to the size, I think, oregano size flake. And it is homogeneous prior to being sent to the laboratory. So you just need to receive the samples in the actual hemp, and you're ready to analyze. No spiking, no lyophilized pellet, none of that. As I mentioned, we do have our full suite of proficiency testing programs, but in addition to that, we do realize that our laboratories have the need for quality assurance and educational samples, whether it's to address a non-conformance or training. We wanted to make sure that we have these samples available. So let's just look at a little bit of the differences between proficiency testing and other external quality assurance programs versus quality assurance or educational samples. Proficiency testing is usually used for experienced lab personnel versus, QA/ES samples are for new or inexperienced lab personnel. Proficiency testing is used to establish and validate the methods you already have, versus QA/ES might be if you're trying to establish a new method or you're working out validation process with the method you're working on. Also, proficiency testing meets accreditation and certification needs. Quality assurance educational samples don't. They're more for training purposes, so to speak. But there's many more uses for quality assurance and educational samples. Please reach out to AOAC if you'd like to learn more about those or if you'd like to purchase any. Other programs that are being assessed, labs came to us, they said, hey, listen, you got all these great programs and we want to come to you for a one-stop shop. So we don't have to come to you just for flower and go to somebody else for this. So that's why AOAC has now flower, gummies, oils, and also foreign matter is right around the corner. We've already addressed that. But some of the other programs that are being assessed are in more specific matrices, such as beverages, such as chocolate matrices, and also looking at the possibility of using samples for lab shopping for the regulating laboratories. So abundance of uses for PT samples. As Tracy had mentioned earlier, not just proficiency testing, but I also am the staff liaison for AOAC. And AOAC has recently done a revision. While 17025 has not changed since 2017, which we based the AOAC guidelines on, we felt the need to incorporate a new appendix that addresses all the interpretations for cannabis laboratories. We've done that through the years for micro, for chem, for dietary supplements and pharmaceuticals. And now we took the last 2 years to sit down with experts from accrediting bodies, from industry, from state and federal regulatory agencies to sit down and come up with this appendix to offer the ultimate guidance for cannabis laboratories. So even if you're accredited to just 17025, I encourage you to pick up this guide. If nothing else, it'll help take the gray out of 17025 and how it applies to cannabis laboratories, which I think is a huge asset. Again, AOAC, the AOAC guide is produced by AOAC, which is the Analytical Laboratory Accreditation Criteria Committee. It was formed to help labs meet challenges of accreditation. It interprets and helps take the gray out of 17025. I know even being in PT for 26 years and dealing with 17025 for 26 years, I'd love something that helps take any ambiguity out of what they're trying to tell me, So please look at this document. It provides so much guidance. This was just a quick example, 4.2.2, which is the ISO requirement, and then how it was adjusted by the experts from the cannabis community to relate to that specific clause for the cannabis laboratories. So again, it offers a wealth of information, if nothing less, just interpreting 17025 for your laboratory. AOAC just doesn't have PT. We're only one department within AOAC. We have our standards and methods department that puts together the SMPR, standard method performance requirements. This is what's done prior to an official methods of analysis. Hey, what do we need? What are the requirements of an official method? Then once those are done, we have the official methods of analysis or performance tested methods. A method can fall into one of those two categories. We also have the AOAC guide, as I just noted, for interpreting 17025. We have all of our proficiency testing programs, whether it's food, environmental, or now the cannabis and hemp, to address your needs, and cannabis analytical science program to help with training and education. And again, even if it's for mere informational purposes, join the CAS program. It's a wealth of knowledge. It really is. I would really like to thank everybody for your time and for being able to provide this information. I'd like to thank Tracy and Kristen and everybody from Perry Johnson for allowing us and partnering with us to produce this webinar. If you guys have any additional questions, please contact us. There's 2 QR codes. There's one to get more information on specifically the cannabis and hemp proficiency testing, and there's another to get specific information on our cannabis analytical science program. But I encourage you all to use these this information to help you, to help your laboratories. And even if you have a question that's not pertaining to our program, if it's just in general about proficiency testing, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you out and to provide an answer if I can. So again, thank you very much, and we appreciate your time, and thank you, PGLA. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tracy and Kristen for questions and answering.
Great, thank you, Shane, for that really informative presentation. And again, I'm glad to hear that there is another option for PTs for cannabis and hemp. So now we did have some questions that came in, and we will take some time. If you still have a question now, you can go ahead and type it in. Before we do that, Shane, if you could just click on the next slide. I just wanted to make sure everyone is informed, where I forget to tell you about upcoming workshops that we have. We might have some additional free webinars that are typical 40-minute to an hour webinars that might pop up in the summer. But for right now, on our website, we do have 2 free live workshops. One is on June 18th. This is more for measurement uncertainty for calibration laboratories, but it's a free 2-hour workshop. People do get a certificate for that. And the next one is for externally provided products and services in July. And that also is a 2-hour workshop, and a certificate will be provided to whoever attends for that. So just wanted to make sure I informed everyone about that before we got off today. And I guess we can go ahead and go through some of the questions we did have come up. So Shane, our first question came in is that it says our laboratory receives our PT test from NSI labs for microbiology testing. However, in the process of receiving the 17025 accreditation, NSI Labs PT schedules dictates our next PT test will be sent out not until September. Are there PT tests from AOAC for micro? I'm sorry, the question got cut off. Micro that are available to be sent out sooner. And what schedule are PT tests sent out on? Can you discuss the differences between PT tests between other vendors such as NSI and AOAC? And I know you had a slide on actually on this on when your schedule was for this. This might already have been answered sort of, but maybe you can recap.
Sure. So we just finished the pilot program, and again, we're using actual, hemp with this hemp spiked material. We are processing the results for that. So we anticipate a live round being available Q4 for that. If you'd like to start communication with AOAC, we haven't put it on our website yet because we want to get the pilot program over with, but it will be a live program starting in Q4, and that will cover the analytes that I mentioned, which are Salmonella, Staic, Aspergillus, S. aureus, and then the various quantitative.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And then they also might be able to combine, there's a couple of questions that came in. You might be able to combine both of these, but the second part of that question was really discussing the differences between these PT tests versus other vendors and AOAC, for example, NSI and Emerald. I know you might not be able to point out particular other companies, but I know you had a slide on maybe what you're seeing out there versus what AOAC offers, and was curious about your turnaround as well.
Yeah, so our turnaround time is less than 30 days. We usually try to get that done within 2 weeks of the last submission date. So usually what we do is we'll send out a set of samples. Labs have 2 weeks to analyze, might be 3 weeks depending on the program. Once we get that last set of results, we produce turnaround reports within 30 days, but it's usually within 2 weeks of the due date, because we already have a process in place by the time we send the samples for calculating all of that.
Okay. I have a question for you about PTs. So do you, right now I know it's new, but is it going to be for different matrices or different tests? Is it going to be like once a year you're going to run these, or you're going to have, once you get the starter, will be a couple times, once a quarter? What's your thoughts?
No, Yeah, no, great question, Tracy. So we're aiming for 2 times per year to have live shipments, and then as participation increases and we see the need, we might go to 3 times a year. It's just going to depend also on the laboratory's need. One of the other things that I would also specify to laboratories is that, if you're a cannabis laboratory participating in a PT program that is not cannabis, okay, you first of all may want to consider participating in a cannabis program, but you also realize that that's sole source. We can also offer sole source. And even if a program isn't currently accredited, and again, different accrediting bodies have stances on this, is that, let's say it's a program is not accredited, but it's the matrix you need. If it's sole source, that might be accepted. So these are until the program is accredited. So these are things that laboratories should think about, is that, okay, it might not be, if you're cannabis lab analyzing hemp, you might want to jump into a cannabis program, even if it's not accredited yet, knowing that it will be accredited because it is a sole source if there's nothing else available, because you're getting the actual matrix. You're getting that routine matrix that's homogeneous.
Yeah, I can comment on that too. I mean, we've ran into issues as an accreditor where people have utilized well-known industry sources for PT, and that provider is not accredited. I mean, encourage accreditation, but sometimes, those are the experts in that, in that area. And maybe eventually they get accredited, but we still take the position that, ensure that whatever you're getting is fit for the, fit for purpose for what you're testing, and they're appropriate. We encourage always use of accredited sources, but for instances like you're saying, it may not always be possible. So I think
But yeah, because it would be in process. The program is in process of that accreditation, but it's not there yet. But it is the only program that sources that particular matrices. So yeah, there's a lot of variables there, but I appreciate your comment on that, Tracy. Thank you.
All right, and we have another question. Does AOAC carry PT samples for class 1 and class 2 residual solvents and hemp seed oil as listed in USP 467?
Wow, don't know about USP 467 specifically, but we do offer, we just finished up our pilot program in oils, which offers class 1, 2, 3, and an additional class, I can't remember what it is, but of residual solvents, and there's many. I think it's over 100, 200, something like that. If you'd like specifics, please contact us and we can give you the specific list. We do design our programs around our SMPRs, the standard method performance requirements, because the assumption is that laboratories need to be able to analyze for all these things that encompass a method.
Okay. All right, a couple more questions. Just double check. We got a thank you from someone all the way from Albania that came and listened to you today. Someone from our audience.
We ship to Albania.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can ship cannabis and hemp internationally. Just so people know, as long as you have the appropriate DEA or whatever the forms are for that particular country. And sometimes it's actually easier to ship internationally than it is domestically. I'm not sure how or why, but sometimes the restrictions make it that way.
Okay, good to know. Good to know, because you're starting to see this, cannabis and hemp. It's really everywhere.
Oh yeah, we've had so many international. We've had just as many international inquiries as we have domestic.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. A couple more questions. Can I receive a sample report for a program I'm interested in?
Absolutely. Please, if I may, I'm going to go back to just this so everybody has a QR code and the cannabis_PT. Please send us an email. Be more than happy to provide you with a sample report for whatever program and analyte and matrices you're looking for. Again, we have programs in dried flower and biomass. We have the oils, and then we also have the gummies. So please let us know what you need. Be more than happy to send out a sample report so you can see how we digest and compute the information. I think that's very important for labs to see.
Okay. And then for microbiology, can labs submit for qPCR?
Yes, laboratories absolutely can. This is a question we get often. We have new qPCR. We're doing genetic testing instead of the traditional plate counter. We're doing qPCR and confirming that with plate count. That's all fine. Our micro programs are set up so that you can provide a plate count technology along with a genetic, whether it's qPCR or some other type of DNA or RNA test kit or method. We can accommodate that.
All right, well, I think that will wrap it up for the questions for the day. And again, please visit us again on our monthly workshops and webinars, and sign up for our website for information. And as well, AOAC, I believe, has a sign up too for any upcoming. And actually, is there Shane, a way that people that are new to AOAC PT programs to go on the AOAC website and sign up to just get information about the programs coming out?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. So if you go to the AOAC website, there is a specific page on our cannabis and hemp programs. Also, I'll just divert back to this real quick. If you'd like additional information or want to contact us, please cannabis_PT at AOAC.org. That comes to all of our PT staff. We'll be more than happy to accommodate anything that you need, whether it's information, general information, or information about enrolling in our program. Be happy to assist.
Okay, all right, well, sounds good. Again, Shane, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation today. And if anyone has any other further questions, in the last slide there, there's Shane's email. Shane, if you want to click over to the next slide, or if there's something that you have a question about accreditation in regard to PT, I have my email is also there. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website pretty shortly, right after the end of this session. So, okay, well, thank you everyone for your time. Shane, thank you again. And everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, bye-bye.